Hi, Professor Bendori. This is Team Heritage Planning Assistant. That's Jenny, Lisa, Michelle, and Shreya. And we're here to kind of give you a walkthrough of our model. So the user of our model is the VP of Operations, and the first step that he takes to use the model is to enter the information given to him by the marketing team. So that mainly includes the information about the number of words that's to be received in any given month. So it's broken up by country, and they all have different rates. So the blue cells are cells that he can basically type information into. Once he's done populating this, he goes to step 2, which means he starts entering staffing inputs. This calls up a user form where he's able to enter these different pieces of information for the 3 roles in the in-house team: editors, finalizers, and reviewers. And he's also able to enter some additional data about fixed salaries in the team, the maximum number of employees that the company can physically house due to space constraints, and the maximum number of editors they can train in any given quarter due to the trainer availability. Finally, he enters the target for a gross profit margin that's given to him by the CEO. So, for example, let's just set that to 40% for now. And he can finally come here and submit the information. So we populated this user form earlier to save time, and whatever information is typed in is saved until it's overwritten. The next step is then for him to run the assistant, which is essentially a solver model that does the optimization calculation. All right, so after the solver optimization model runs and it calculates the optimum staffing level for all 4 quarters, it pulls up this dashboard. The first thing to check in the dashboard is if an optimal solution was achieved for all 4 quarters, which means that whether he was within budget and whether he was able to achieve the capacity needed based on the marketing team's targets. The top 2 charts present some financial information, cost per word, price per word, and gross margin, as well as by quarter, and then that same information just presented in an annual format, just the annual numbers for the end of the year. He also can see the forecasted new employees and turnover by role that he should expect if he wants to achieve these profit margins. And note that our solver model has actually found a better solution than the target of 40% that we had entered. So he can see the new employees as well as departures by role and can accordingly plan for that. And lastly, it shows him how the words that were delivered. So this represents the number of words edited by editors, finalizers, and freelancers. So you can see the big jump in freelancer words here, or the big gap rather, showing that he needs to plan for that in quarter 3. From this sheet, we can now go to the sensitivity analysis. We have some information checked here, but what he can do now is basically change that information. So let's say he can. So if you remember, our original setting that we entered into the user form was all 40%, and we had an attrition rate of 25%. But he can now change that based on whatever. Based on his judgment, to say 30% here, 55% here, back to 30%, and then say aim for an aggressive 60% in the last quarter, and say he's expecting a lot of attrition, so set that to the maximum, and then run the assistant again. So once it reruns the solver engine, it brings us back to this main dashboard. And it's important to come back here because you can see that an optimal solution has not been achieved for quarters 2 and 4. And the VP operations can then go into those sheets and investigate the cause of the problem. So, for example, here he can see that the total capacity needed has been achieved, but that he would have to go over budget in order to achieve that. You can then go back to the sensitivity page and see how the headcount may have changed, based on the new information that he's entered. So this chart shows the current staffing level and then compares that to a pessimistic, expected, and optimistic scenario that is based off the main attrition rate that is entered. And it also shows in the cost per word and price per word and gross margin for the year based on the new information. Now let's quickly just run through some of the solver constraints that we've set up. And so we're trying to minimize cost per word by changing the number of editors and freelancers available, with the constraints that the required capacity must be achieved. The number of editors added in a given quarter is less than or equal to the maximum you're allowed. Number of editors must be an integer, but freelancers need not, because there's no fixed cost associated with having a freelancer in your database, and they think of freelancers in terms of number of words edited. We can also look at make sure that the number of freelancers is not a negative number, that the people at the end of your quarter is more or equal to the people at the start, because they don't tend to lay off people. That you're within budget, and that you have the minimum number of reviewers needed to review the work of your editors, and that you are not exceeding the maximum possible team size based on space constraints. That's about it for our model. We hope that you enjoyed our demo, and we've certainly had fun working on this project. So do let us know if you have any questions. This is Jenny, Lisa, Michelle, and Shreya signing off.